considered a problem, isn't the movement toward the other rather similar to the idea of trauma? In other words, isn't trauma an encounter with the other? Those are three questions about your overall picture.
Okay. Let me try really to be brief, maybe to allow even for another question. First, I think that, there is trauma and trauma. Let's take precisely the male relationship towards femininity. I claim that this idea that behind the prejudices, the mask of what we men conceive as femininity, there is some concealed, inaccessible to us, otherness of the true femininity. This is the ultimate male myth. And the same goes for colonialism. So I claim that the ultimate racism is not, we can reduce the other, they are primitive and so on, but it's on the contrary, this idea that there is an inaccessible mystery out there. This is the eternal, again to use this Fichtean word, anstos motive of colonialism. There is always, the more you conquer the other, all the more there is some mystery there. So the ultimate trauma for me is not this inaccessible other, but for example, in terms of femininity, and here I agree with my good friend, enemy, Judith Butler, who once was quite justified, I think, in criticizing me from my early revisionist days, when she said that the difference between her and me is that I still believe that there is something to be searched for as an authentic feminine position beneath or behind male distortions, while she knows that there is nothing behind the distortions. No. And I fully accept it. In other words, the true trauma is not that you encounter some horror behind the mask, but there is nothing behind the mask. Or, to make one of my favorite quotes from Hegel, the true trauma is, as Hegel puts it, in this crucial passage from consciousness to self-consciousness, that behind the veil of appearance there is nothing, only what you put there. Or, to quote another Hegel's point, which is, I think, crucial precisely for how to relate to the ethnic other. This, I quote it all the time, but I think it's a perfect one. And Hegel says that the mysteries of the Egyptians were mysteries also for the Egyptians themselves. And I think when you realize this, then you are authentically not Eurocentrist or whatsoever. That is to say, I claim that the most racist imaginable attitude is this idea that we will never fully understand the other because, we never fully know the context, there is always something more to be learned and so on. But what if the other simply is in itself, or him or herself, not fully contextualized? The mistake of this logic is that the obstacle which prevents us from fully understanding the other is simply an epistemological one. We do not yet know what, for example, you say something. We can easily play these solipsistic games. How do you know what you really meant? I would have known exactly all your life, but I cannot. Does this mean that I cannot fully understand you? No, because I claim that you do not fully understand yourselves. Let me give you one example, which I will finish, from Daniel Dennett, okay, officially my enemy, cognitive psychology, who quotes, this nice quote from Lincoln, like, you can fool some people all the time, you can fool all people some of the time, you cannot fool all the people all the time. Now, as Dennett points out, there is a fundamental logical ambiguity here. Because when you say you can fool some people all the time, this can be read as if there are some idiots who can be deceived all the time, some, always the same people. Like, let's say I'm an idiot, you can deceive me all the time. Or it can mean all the time. That is to say, at every time, there is some idiot. But once it's me, then it's maybe you. Or no. So, but now, Dennett's point, where I agree with him, spontaneously a Hegelian one, is that it's wrong to ask what did Lincoln really mean. He probably didn't know himself. It just sounded him a nice phrase. And I claim that Lincoln is not here an exception. Language in itself has this openness. And I wonder if the trauma is not to be thought more here. Apropos, so that I don't get lost, fundamentalism, I would simply say that, of course, it was ironically meant and so on. But what I meant is simply that there is something which spontaneously, in a totally naive way, I cannot but designate as fundamentalism. If Tibetans and Amish are not fundamentalists, then I don't know who is fundamentalist. Point two, I claim there is a radical difference, absolutely evident, between them and so-called moral majority fundamentalists. A certain dimension, the dimension of envy, obsession with others' enjoyment, etc., is not present in these cases. That's all I meant, that there is a certain kind of, the conclusion that I draw from this, which is maybe a little more unpleasant for some of you, is that the first thing that we should do today, if we still want to play the game of being some kind of radical leftist, it's do not accept the opposites, the description of bad versus good guys, the way the media or the public opinion presents this opposition to you. I don't think that the opposition of liberals versus fundamentalists is the basic opposition which should structure our political struggle. I don't think. I think that multiculturalist liberals themselves, that at least the predominant multiculturalist attitude, had its own implicit racism. As to what you said about respect for the other, opening to the other, and so on, yes, I agree with you, but nonetheless I would emphasize how always colonialism had this element of false respect for the other. Let's take India. What surprised me is to what extent Indian colonizers always had a great respect for, this Buddhist wise or Hindu old wise men. In other words, they were always ready to admit that we Westerners are vulgar, mechanistic, Cartesian, all the Al Gore theory, he's the big anti-Cartesian, and so on, and that they are infinitely wiser than us. What they feared was not the otherness of the other, but what if an Indian would try to develop technology and remain the same as us? I claim that the strategy of colonialism, it's not let's erase the difference, let's impose our view. It's on the contrary, how to maintain the difference. This was always the most fundamental goal of colonialism, how to maintain the difference. Nothing suited better, again, an English colonialist than this famous Indian otherness. Oh my God, how wise they are. We are worthless of their wisdom. We immersed in our materialist culture and so on.